What we're going to be doing is looking at polynomial long division. What I want to do is go over a long division problem that we did in middle school and compare that to what we're going to be doing now. So if you look at our two different problems, we're going to divide 11 and 23,456. So if you remember from middle school, 11 goes into 23 two times. 2 times 11 is 22. And then we subtract those two numbers and we get 1. So with polynomial long division, we're going to take the x plus 3 and we're going to divide the x cubed plus 12x squared plus 47x minus 60. So x goes into x cubed, x squared times. How we get that is we take the x cubed and we divide it by the x. And so if you remember, whenever we divide, we subtract the exponents, and that's how we're getting the x squared. Then x squared times x gives us x cubed. X squared times 3 gives us 3x. And then what we do is we subtract our terms. Now when we subtract them, what we get, and these terms always cancel, what we get is 9x squared. That should be a squared right there. So we bring down the 4. 11 goes into 14 one time. 1 times 11 gives us 11. And then we subtract, and that gives us a 3. So in the same way, what we're going to do is we're going to see how many times does x go into 9x squared. So I'm going to bring down the 47. X goes into 9x squared 9x times. 9x times x is 9x squared. 9x times 3 gives me 27. Then I'm going to subtract the terms. And that gives me 20x. So then what we're going to do is we're going to bring down the 5. And that gives me 35. 11 goes into 35 3 times. 3 times 11 is 33. Then I subtract my terms and I get 2. So I'm going to bring down the 60. X goes into 20x 20 times. 20 times x is 20x. 20 times 3 gives me 60. And I subtract my terms. And that gives me negative 120. I bring down the 6. 11 goes into 26 2 times. 2 times 11 is 22. And then that gives me 4. I take the remainder, and I'm going to put 4 over 11. And that's my final answer. So in the same way, when I'm looking at my polynomial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my remainder, and that's negative 120, and I'm going to divide it by my divisor, which is x plus 3. And that right there is my answer. Let's look at another one. What we're going to do is we're going to take the x minus 5, and we're going to divide x to the 4th plus minus 8x squared plus 16x, 8x cubed, 16x squared. We're going to put a plus 0x minus 19. We have a 0 for the placeholder. Just like 101 is not the same thing as 11, we have the 0 for the placeholder. In the same way with polynomials, we have a placeholder. So when we're looking at this, x goes into x to the 4th, x to the 3rd time. X cubed times x is x to the 4th. X cubed times 5 is negative 5x cubed. Then I subtract my terms. First terms cancel. That gives me negative 3x cubed. I bring down the 16x squared. X goes into negative 3x cubed, negative 3x squared times negative 3x squared times x is negative 3x cubed. Negative 3x squared times negative 5 is positive 15x squared. Then what we do is subtract our terms. First terms cancel, and we get x squared. I bring down the 0x. X goes into x squared, x times x is x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. And then I subtract my terms. First terms always cancel for doing it correctly. This gives us a 5x minus 19. X goes into 5x 5 times. If we were to subtract the 5x times x is 5x, and then 5 times 5 is 25. I'm going to subtract my terms. First one's cancel, and that gives me a positive 6. So I have 6 over x minus 5. Let's look at two more. If we look at letter C, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the x minus 6, and I have 2x cubed minus 20x squared plus 56x minus 46. X goes into 2x cubed, 2x squared times 2x squared times x is 2x cubed. 2x squared times negative 6 is negative 12x squared. I'm going to subtract my terms. Once again, the first ones always cancel. That gives me negative x squared. I bring down the 56x. X goes into negative 8x squared, negative 8x times. Negative 8x times x is negative 8x squared. Negative 8x times negative 6 gives me a positive 48x. Then what I do is I subtract the terms. They cancel, and I get a 8x minus 46. X goes into 8x 8 times. 8 times x is 8x. 8 times 6 is negative 48. And then what I do is subtract my terms. And that gives me 2. And so my remainder is plus 2 over, and then I take my divisor, which is x minus 6. Okay, last one. We're going to take the x minus 7, and we're going to divide 8x cubed minus 49x squared minus 45x minus 36. X goes into 8x cubed, 8x squared times 8x squared times x is 8x cubed. 8x squared times negative 7 is negative 56x squared. And then what I do is subtract my terms. That gives me 7x squared. I bring down the negative 45x. X goes into 7x squared, 7x times 7x is 7x squared. 7x times 7 is negative 49x. And then I subtract my terms. That gives me a 4x. I bring down the 36. X goes into 4x 4 times. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times 7 gives us negative 28. And then I subtract my terms, and what I get is negative 8. So that gives me minus 8 over, and then x minus 7.